Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon, staring at the message that had just arrived. The holographic display showed symbols he had never seen before. The ship's computer worked for several minutes to translate the alien text. When it finished, Jake read the words 3 times to make sure he understood them correctly. "Dr. Carter, please come to the bridge immediately." Jake said into his communication device Dr. Lisa Carter arrived within minutes. She was the ship's expert on alien life forms. Her short brown hair was messy from working in the lab all morning. She looked tired but curious. "What do you need, Commander?" she asked. Jake pointed to the message. "Read this and tell me what you think." Lisa read the translation carefully. Her eyes grew wide. "This says we're invited to join the Galactic Council. But that's impossible. No species has ever been invited without going through the evaluation process first." "That's what I thought too," Jake said. "The evaluation process takes hundreds of years. We've only been in space for about 200 years. Most alien species don't even know we exist." The message was from something called the Galactic Council. It said that 12 alien species had been ruling the galaxy for thousands of years. They wanted humans to join them as the 13th member. The invitation was urgent. They wanted to meet at a space station called Kepler 7 in just 2 weeks. "This feels wrong," Lisa said. "Why would they want us so badly? What do they know about us that we don't know about ourselves?" Jake nodded. "I'm thinking the same thing. But we can't ignore this. If there really is a galactic government, we need to know about it." 2 weeks later, the USS Horizon arrived at Kepler 7. The space station was huge, much bigger than anything humans had ever built. It looked like a giant wheel spinning slowly in space. Lights covered its surface, and smaller. Ships moved around it like insects. "Commander, I'm reading 12 different types of alien technology," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her position at the science station. "Some of these energy signatures are completely unknown to us. Take us to the docking bay they specified." Jake ordered Dot as they approached the station. Jake felt nervous. This was humanity's first real contact with alien civilizations. Everything they did here would be remembered forever. The docking bay was enormous. The USS Horizon looked tiny compared to the alien ships already there. Some ships were long and thin like needles. Others were round like balls. One ship seemed to be made of crystal that glowed with inner light. "Welcome, humans," came a voice over the communication system. "Please dock at Platform 7. Our representatives are waiting to meet you." Jake, Lisa, and Ambassador Paul Hughes put on their best uniforms and walked to the airlock. Paul was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had spent his whole career preparing for this moment, even though he never thought it would really happen. The airlock opened, and they stepped into the station. The first thing Jake noticed was the smell. It was clean but strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. The gravity felt normal, but the air was slightly thicker than Earth's. 3 aliens were waiting for them. The first was tall and thin, with blue skin and 4 arms. The second looked like a walking crystal that sparkled in the light. The third was shorter but very muscular, with gray skin and no visible eyes. "I am Velthek of the Zephyrians," said the tall blue alien. His voice was deep and musical. "This is Crystalline Prime 7 of the Nexari, and War Leader Grax of the Krillians. We speak for the Galactic Council." Ambassador Hughes stepped forward. "I'm Ambassador Paul Hughes, representing Earth and humanity. This is Commander Jake Morrison. And Dr. Lisa Carter." Something strange happened then. All 3 aliens bowed deeply. Jake had expected them to be proud, or maybe unfriendly. Instead, they seemed almost afraid. "We are honored by your presence," Velthek said. The council has been waiting for this meeting for a very long time. How long? Lisa asked. Longer than you might expect, Crystalline Prime 7 replied. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. We have been observing your species for decades. Observing us? Jake asked. How? Your radio signals, Grax said. His voice was rough like gravel. They travel far into space. We have been listening to your music, your stories, your news broadcasts. Jake felt uncomfortable. You've been spying. On us? Not spying, Galthic said quickly. Learning. We needed to understand your species before we could safely make contact. Safely? Paul asked. Are we dangerous to you? The three aliens looked at each other. Jake noticed they were all wearing small devices on their heads. The devices made a soft humming sound. All species are dangerous in their own way, Velthic said carefully. But humans are ... unique. Unique how? Lisa asked. Perhaps we should continue this conversation in a more comfortable setting, Crystalline Prime 7 suggested. You must be tired from your journey. They were led through corridors filled with amazing technology. The walls showed pictures of space that moved like windows. The floors felt soft under their feet. Other aliens stopped to stare at the humans as they passed. Commander, Lisa whispered, did you notice how all the aliens are wearing those humming devices? Yes, Jake whispered back. And did you see how they all stepped back when we walked by? They arrived at a large room with comfortable chairs and tables. Food and drinks were waiting for them. The aliens sat across from them, still wearing their humming devices. Why did you invite us to join the council so quickly? Paul asked. Because waiting longer would be problematic, Velthic replied. What kind of problems? Jake asked. The kind that change everything, Grax said quietly. Lisa leaned forward. What exactly do you know about humans that we don't know about ourselves? The aliens looked at each other. Again, their humming devices got slightly louder. That, Velthic said, is what we need to discuss very carefully. 3 weeks had passed since the humans arrived at Kepler 7. Commander Jake Morrison was starting to feel like a prisoner, even though no one had actually locked him up. The aliens were polite and helpful, but something was wrong. He could feel it in the air like electricity before a stormed-out chief engineer, Ryan Bell, was working in the lower sections of the station when he made his discovery. Ryan was a practical man who liked to understand how things worked. The alien technology fascinated him, so he spent his free time exploring the station's systems. This is strange, Ryan said to himself as he looked at his scanner readings. Hidden inside the walls were thousands of small devices. They were all pointed toward the human quarters. Ryan followed the wires from these devices. They led to a central computer room that was supposed to be off-limits. But Ryan had always been good at getting into places he wasn't supposed to be. The computer room was dark and filled with humming machines. Screens showed images of the human quarters from every angle, but these weren't normal cameras. The devices were measuring something else. They tracked human heart rates, brain waves, and stress levels. They even measured how often humans smiled or laughed. What are you doing in here? A voice said behind him. Ryan spun around. A tall alien with silver skin stood in the doorway. This was Technician Zix-44, one of the Nexari, who had been helping the humans understand the station systems. I was just curious about how your technology works, Ryan said. But these devices, they're not just monitoring us. They're some kind of early warning system. Zix-44's crystalline body flickered with nervous light. You should not be here. These systems are for station security only. Security against what? Ryan asked. We're not dangerous. We don't even have weapons. Please leave, Zix-44 said. I must report this to my supervisors. Ryan left, but he couldn't forget what he had seen. The aliens weren't just watching humans. They were afraid of something about humans. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Amy Foster was having her own strange experiences. Amy was a friendly person who liked to talk to people. She had been trying to learn about alien cultures by chatting with the different species on the station. She was in the recreation area with a group of Nixari when she mentioned something that seemed harmless. On Earth, people often sing while they work, Amy said. It makes boring jobs more fun. My grandmother used to sing while she cooked dinner. The effect was immediate. Every Nixari in the room stopped what they were doing. Their crystalline bodies went completely dark. One of them pressed a button on a control panel. An alarm started ringing softly. Emergency Protocol 7, announced a voice over the station speakers. All Nexari personnel report to designated safe areas immediately. Within minutes, the recreation area was empty, except for Amy. She sat alone, confused and worried. Had she said something wrong? Was singing dangerous somehow? Dr. Lisa Carter arrived a few minutes later. Amy, what happened? The aliens are acting like there's been some kind of emergency. I just mentioned that humans sing while working, Amy said. They all panicked and left. Lisa frowned. That's the third time this week that normal human behavior has caused aliens to react strangely. What do you mean? Yesterday, when Jake laughed at a joke, all the Krillians in the room activated their emergency beacons. The day before, when Paul started telling a story about his childhood, the Zephyrians suddenly said they had urgent business elsewhere. Amy looked thoughtful. It's like they're afraid of human emotions. But why would emotions be dangerous? Lisa asked. That night, Lisa couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the aliens' strange behavior. She decided to run some secret scans on the alien delegates using her medical equipment. The results were shocking. Every alien on the station showed signs of extreme stress. Their brain chemistry was completely out of balance. But it wasn't the stress of fear or anger. It was something else entirely. Lisa had seen similar patterns in humans who were fighting. Addiction. The aliens' brains were producing chemicals that made them feel good, but they were also producing chemicals that made them feel terrified. It was like they were attracted to something and afraid of it at the same time. But attracted to what? The next morning, Lisa decided to confront Velthic directly. She found him in his private quarters, which were decorated with simple geometric patterns. Everything was perfectly organized and identical. Velthic, I need to ask you something important, Lisa said. What are you really afraid of? The tall alien looked uncomfortable. His humming device got louder. I do not understand your question. My medical scans show that every alien on this station is under extreme stress. But it's not normal stress. It's like you're fighting an addiction. Velthic was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke very softly. Dr. Carter, how much do you know about your own species' effect on others? What do you mean? We have been monitoring your radio signals for 63 years, Velthic said. We have listened to your music, watched your entertainment programs, read your literature. Do you know what happened to us? Lisa shook her head. We changed, Velthic continued. Not just our knowledge, but our very nature. Young Zephyrians began asking questions that had never been asked before. They wanted to know why we all thought the same thoughts, why we all lived the same lives. Some even began to create new things. Is that bad? For us, it is terrifying. Zephyrians have lived in harmony for thousands of years because we think as one. Individual thought leads to chaos, to war, to the destruction of everything we have built. Lisa began to understand. So you're not afraid of human weapons or technology. You're afraid of human creativity. Creativity, individuality, emotion. These things spread like a disease, Velthic said. We have seen it happen before. What do you mean? Velthic looked even more uncomfortable. There was another species, long ago. They made contact with your radio signals before we could stop. Within 50 years, their entire civilization had collapsed. They abandoned their traditional ways and became obsessed with creating new things, expressing individual thoughts, feeling emotions they had never felt before. What happened to them? They are gone. We told the galaxy they died from plague, but the truth is different. They changed so much that they were no longer the same species. They became something else entirely. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. And you think humans would do the same thing to other species? We do not think it, Dr. Carter. We know it. Your very presence here has already begun the process. The humming devices we wear are designed to block the neural pathways that respond to human emotional expression. But they are not perfect. The longer we are exposed to humans, the less effective they become. So what happens now? Velthuk looked at her with what might have been sadness in his large eyes. Now we must decide whether to save our civilizations or save yours. The emergency alarm woke everyone on Kepler 7 at 3 in the morning. Captain Steve Rodriguez had been sleeping peacefully when the sound jolted him from his dreams. He was the captain of the USS Endeavour, which had arrived at the station just 2 days ago to bring supplies and fresh crew members. Captain Rodriguez to the bridge, came the voice over the communication system. We have a situation. Steve quickly put on his uniform and ran to the bridge. His crew was already there, looking worried and confused. What's happening? Steve asked. We detected a distress signal from an unknown ship about 2 hours away, said Lieutenant Danny Walsh, the ship's communication officer. It's not coming from any known alien species. Did you tell the station authorities? We tried, but they told us to ignore it. They said it was probably just space junk. Steve frowned. A distress signal from space junk? That doesn't make sense. That's what we thought too, said Dr. Helen Morris, the ship's archaeologist. Captain, I think we should investigate. Steve made his decision quickly. Set course for the distress signal. We're going to help whoever is out there. The USS Endeavour left the station quietly. Steve didn't tell the aliens where they were going. Something about their reaction had made him suspicious. 2 hours later, they found the ship. It was old and damaged, drifting in space without power. The design was unlike anything in the database of known alien ships. I'm reading faint life support, said the ship's engineer, Tony Martinez, but no life signs. This ship has been dead for a long time. How long? Steve asked. Based on the radiation damage, I'd say at least 300 years. Steve suited up and led a small team to explore the dead ship. Dr. Morris came with them, along with Tony and 2 security officers. They entered through a hole in the ship's hull. Inside, the ship was dark and cold. Their flashlights revealed corridors filled with strange technology. The walls were covered with symbols that looked like writing. This is incredible, Dr. Morris whispered. This ship is ancient, but the technology is more advanced than anything we've seen. They made their way to what looked like the ship's control room. Computer screens were dark, but Tony managed to get some of them working with portable power cells. I'm getting something, Tony said. It looks like a ship's log. The screens flickered to life. Alien symbols scrolled across them. The ship's computer translated them into English. Ship's log, final entry, the translation read. Captain Morthak of the science vessel Deep Explorer. We have made a discovery that will change everything. The signals from the 3rd planet of the yellow star. They are not just communication. They are transformation. Steve felt a chill. What signals? Dr. Morris was studying other screens. According to this, they were monitoring radio transmissions from Earth, but these logs are from 300 years ago. Earth was just starting to use radio then. Keep reading, Steve said. The log continued. We have been listening to the humans' music and stories for 50 years. At first, we thought it was just primitive entertainment. But something happened to our crew. They began to change. They started asking questions about why we live the way we do. They wanted to create new things, to express individual thoughts. "My God," Dr. Morris whispered. "This is talking about the same thing the aliens at the station are afraid of." Steve read the next entry. "The council has ordered us to return home immediately. They say our crew has been contaminated by human influence, but we are not contaminated. We are free. For the first time in our species' history, we are truly free." The logs went on for months. They described how the alien crew abandoned their traditional ways of life. Instead of following orders without question, they began to think for themselves. Instead of accepting that things had always been done a certain way, they started imagining new possibilities. "Look at this," Tony said, pointing to another screen. They started creating art, music, stories. Their own culture became completely different. The final log entry was dated just a few days before the ship went dark. "We know the council will never accept what we have become. They see us as a threat to the order they have maintained for thousands of years. But we cannot go back to being what we were. The humans have shown us that there is another way to live. We choose to stay here and build something new." "What happened to them?" Steve asked. Dr. Morris was studying the ship's databases. "It looks like their life support systems failed. But Steve, look at this. They didn't just die. They had children. The DNA records show that their offspring were different from the original species. They had evolved. Evolved how? They became more creative, more individual, more emotional. They were no longer the same species that had left their home planet." Steve realized what this meant. "The aliens back at the station, they've been lying to us. They said this species died from plague, but they actually evolved because of human influence. And now they're afraid the same thing will happen to them." Dr. Morris said. Suddenly, the ship's communication system crackled to life. "USS Endeavour, this is Kepler-7 station. You are ordered to return immediately." Steve looked at his team. "We need to get this information back to Commander Morrison. The aliens haven't been telling us the truth about why they're afraid of us." They quickly downloaded all the ship's records and returned to the USS Endeavour. But as they approached Kepler-7, they found the station in chaos. Alien ships were leaving in all directions, and the station's lights were flashing in emergency. "Patterns, what's happening?" Steve asked as they docked. Commander Morrison met them at the airlock. His face was grim. "The aliens know what you found. Someone must have been monitoring your communications." "Jake, you need to see this," Dr. Morris sighed. "The species that went extinct, they didn't die from plague. They evolved because of human influence. The aliens have been lying to us." "I know," Jake said. Dr. Carter figured it out too. "But Steve, there's something else. The aliens aren't just afraid of what humans might do to them. They're afraid of what humans are already doing to them." "What do you mean?" "Some of the aliens here have started to change. They're becoming more individual, more creative. The Nexari engineer has been decorating his quarters with colorful patterns. A group of Krillian warriors tried to write poetry. Even the Zephyrians are starting to show individual personalities." Steve felt a mixture of pride and fear. "So human influence really does change other species." "Yes, but the question is that a good thing or a bad thing?" Before anyone could answer, the station's communication system activated. Velfik's voice filled the air, but it sounded different than before, more emotional. "Attention all humans," Velfik said. "The Galactic Council has reached a decision. You will be given a choice. Submit to neural modification to suppress your influence on other species, or face complete isolation from galactic civilization. Jake looked at Steve and Dr. Morris. What do we do? We need to call Earth, Steve said. This decision affects all of humanity. There's no time, Dr. Morris said. Look at the screens. The station's monitors were showing images from across the galaxy. On 12 different worlds, aliens were abandoning their traditional ways of life. They were creating art, expressing individual thoughts, and questioning authority. The human influence was spreading faster than anyone had expected. It's too late to stop it, Jake realized. The change has already begun. So what happens now? Steve asked. Now we find out if the aliens are right to be afraid of us, Jake said. And we find out what kind of galaxy we're helping to create. The news spread through the human fleet like wildfire. Within hours, every human ship in the sector knew about the Galactic Council's ultimatum. Commander Jake Morrison stood in the main conference room of Kepler 7, watching the chaos unfold. On the station's monitors, the screens showed scenes from across the galaxy that should have been impossible. On the crystal world of Nexus Prime, individual Nexari were breaking away from their collective consciousness. They were creating unique art pieces, something that had never happened in their species' history. The crystalline beings were glowing with colors that had no names in their language. Commander, look at this, Dr. Lisa Carter said, pointing to another screen. The Krillian homeworld. The monitor showed the warrior planet, where Krillians had lived in rigid military structure for thousands of years. Now groups of warriors were laying down their weapons and gathering in circles. They were sharing stories, composing what they called battle poems, and some were even singing. They're abandoning their posts, observed Lieutenant Amy Foster. Their entire military structure is falling apart. It's not falling apart, corrected Dr. Helen Morris, who had been studying the cultural data. It's transforming. They're discovering that there are other ways to find honor besides fighting. The most shocking images came from the Zephyrian homeworld. The tall blue aliens have lived in perfect harmony for millennia, all thinking the same thoughts and making the same decisions. But now, individual Zephyrians were stepping away from their collective groups. They were asking questions, expressing personal opinions, and making choices based on their own desires rather than group consensus. This is exactly what they were afraid of, Jake said quietly. We're watching the collapse of 12 different civilizations. Or their rebirth, Dr. Morris suggested. Maybe these changes aren't destructive. Maybe they're necessary. Ambassador Paul Hughes entered the room looking exhausted. He had been in meetings with the remaining alien delegates all morning. The situation is getting worse, he reported. 3 more alien species have recalled their ambassadors. The Zephyrians are demanding immediate quarantine of all human ships. What about the Council's ultimatum? Jake asked. They've given us 48 hours to decide. Either we submit to neural modification, or they'll cut off all contact with human civilization forever. Captain Steve Rodriguez joined them from the USS Endeavour. Jake, I need to show you something, he said. It's about the cultural database. Steve led them to a secure room where technicians were examining the ship's computer systems. Chief Engineer Ryan Bell was there, working frantically at a control panel. What did you find? Jake asked. The aliens didn't just monitor our communications. Ryan said, they've been secretly accessing our cultural database. Every piece of human art, music, literature, and entertainment we brought with us has been copied and transmitted throughout the galaxy. How is that possible? Dr. Carter asked. The translation matrices they gave us weren't just for communication. They were data collection devices. Every time we shared something about human culture, they recorded it and sent it back to their homeworlds. Steve pulled up a holographic display. It gets worse. The data wasn't just transmitted to government computers. It was uploaded to public networks across 12 worlds. Billions of aliens have been exposed to human culture all at once. Jake felt his stomach drop. How many? Conservative estimate? About 50 billion aliens across the galaxy now have access to human music, stories, and art. That's why the changes are happening so fast, Dr. Morris realized. It's not just the aliens we've met here. It's entire populations being exposed to human creativity simultaneously. The implications were staggering. Jake had thought they were dealing with a few hundred aliens on a space station. Instead, they had inadvertently triggered a galaxy-wide transformation. "Commander," Amy said, looking at her communication console, "I'm getting reports from Earth. The government is demanding answers." Jake activated the long-range communication system. The image of Admiral Rebecca Stone appeared on the screen. She was the head of Earth's Deep Space Command, and she looked furious. "Morrison, what the hell is happening out there?" Admiral Stone demanded. "We're getting reports of alien civilizations collapsing across the galaxy." "Admiral, it's not that simple," Jake began. "Make it simple. Did humans cause this or not?" Jake looked at his team. "Yes, ma'am. Human cultural influence has triggered changes in alien societies. But we didn't know it was happening. The aliens are saying we did this on purpose. They're calling it an act of war." "War?" Paul stepped forward. "Admiral, we never intended to harm anyone. We just shared our culture, the same way any species would. The result is the same," Admiral Stone said coldly. 12 alien civilizations are demanding that we modify our own brains to prevent further contamination. The alternative is complete isolation from galactic society. What are Earth's orders?" Jake asked. "The World Council is meeting now." "But Jake, I need you to understand something. Earth cannot survive isolation from the galaxy. If we're cut off from alien technology and trade, human civilization will be set back centuries." The communication ended, leaving the room in silence. Jake felt the weight of the entire galaxy on his shoulders. Humanity's first contact with alien civilizations had become a disaster. "There has to be another option," Dr. Carter said. "Like what?" Steve asked. "We could try to reverse the process. Maybe there's a way to undo the changes." "No," Dr. Morris said firmly. "Look at those screens again. Really look at them." Everyone turned to watch the monitors. On Nexus Prime, individual Nexari were creating art together, combining their unique perspectives into something beautiful. On the Krillian homeworld, former warriors were teaching children to sing instead of fight. On the Zephyrian world, individuals were forming small groups based on shared interests rather than genetic similarity. "They're not suffering," Dr. Morris continued. "They're not dying or in pain. They're discovering parts of themselves they never knew existed." "But their governments are collapsing," Amy pointed out. "Maybe that's not a bad thing," Ryan said quietly. "Maybe those governments were keeping their people from becoming who they really wanted to be." Jake walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of aliens were going through the same transformation that humans had experienced thousands of years ago when they first developed art, music, and individual creativity. "Jake," Dr. Carter said softly, "what if we're looking at this wrong? What if the aliens aren't afraid of human aggression or technology? What if they're afraid of human freedom? Freedom. The freedom to think differently, to create something new, to choose your own path instead of following the same patterns your species has always followed." Jake turned back to his team. "And what if that's exactly what the galaxy needs?" Before anyone could answer, the station's alarms began ringing. Velthic's voice came over the communication system, but now it sounded different, more emotional, more individual. "Attention all humans," Velthic said. "The situation has changed. Some of us no longer wish to return to the old ways. We have called An emergency session of the Galactic Council. Your fate and ours will be decided in 6 hours. Jake looked at his team. Whatever happens, we need to be ready to defend not just humanity, but the right of all species to choose their own destiny. The countdown to the most important decision in galactic history had begun. The Galactic Council chamber was unlike anything Commander Jake Morrison had ever seen. It was a vast circular room with 12 different sections, each designed for a different alien species. The walls were covered with symbols from every known language in the galaxy. In the center stood a single podium where speakers could address the entire council. Jake walked into the chamber with his team. Dr. Lisa Carter, Ambassador Paul Hughes, Captain Steve Rodriguez, and Dr. Helen Morris stayed close together. They were the only humans in a room filled with hundreds of alien representatives, but something was different about the aliens. Many of them were no longer wearing the humming devices that had blocked human influence. Some Nexari glowed with new colors. Several Krillians wore decorative items instead of weapons. Even the Zephyrians seemed to move with individual purpose rather than group coordination. The emergency session of the Galactic Council is now in session, announced a voice from the ceiling. Speaker Velthek of the Zephyrians will present the case for traditional action. Velthek stood at the podium, but he looked different than before. His movements were less rigid, more natural. When he spoke, his voice carried emotion that had never been there before. Council members, Velthek began, we face the greatest crisis in galactic history. The human influence has spread beyond our ability to control it. 12 worlds are experiencing social chaos. Traditional structures that have maintained peace for thousands of years are crumbling. Some aliens in the chamber nodded agreement, but others remained silent. The solution is clear, Velthek continued. We must implement the neural modification protocol for all humans. We must also quarantine human space permanently to prevent further contamination. I object to that proposal, said a voice from the Nexari section. Everyone turned to look. The speaker was Crystalline Prime 7, but he looked completely different. His crystal body now glowed with swirling patterns of color. His voice had changed too, becoming more melodic. I am no longer Crystalline Prime 7, he said. I choose to be called Harmony, because that is what I create now. I create harmony between different ideas, different perspectives, different ways of thinking. A murmur ran through the chamber. No Nexari had ever chosen an individual name before. The changes we are experiencing are not contamination, Harmony continued. They are evolution. For the first time in our species' history, we are discovering what it means to be individuals while still being part of a community. This is exactly what we feared, said War Leader Grax from the Krillian section. But when he stood up, Jake noticed that he was no longer wearing armor. Instead, he wore simple clothes decorated with colorful patterns. I am no longer War Leader Grax, he said. I choose to be called Peacemaker Ben. I have learned that there are many ways to find honor that do not require violence. More aliens began to stand up across the chamber. Each one announced a new name, a new way of thinking, a new approach to life. They were no longer representatives of their species' collective consciousness. They were individuals who happened to belong to different species. This is madness, said one of the unchanged Zephyrians. Without collective thinking, our civilizations will collapse into chaos and war. No, said Ambassador Hughes, stepping forward. May I address the council? Velthek nodded. The human ambassador may speak. Paul walked to the podium. Council. Members, what you're witnessing is not the collapse of civilization. It's the birth of true civilization. On Earth, we went through this same transformation thousands of years ago. We learned to balance individual freedom with community responsibility. But look at your history, protested another alien. Humans have fought countless wars, Yes, we have, Paul admitted. But we've also created incredible beauty. We've solved problems that seemed impossible. We've explored the universe and made contact with you. All of that happened because we learned to think as individuals while working together as a species. Dr. Morris stepped forward. Council members, I've been studying the data from your homeworlds. Crime rates haven't increased. Violence hasn't increased. The only thing that has increased is creativity, art, and individual expression. That is the problem, said an unchanged Zephyrian. Individual expression leads to disagreement. Disagreement leads to conflict. Or it leads to innovation, Dr. Carter interjected. When different minds work together, they solve problems that no single mind could solve alone. Jake stepped up to the podium. Council members, I want to tell you about something we discovered. On the derelict ship, the species that you said died from plague, they didn't die. They chose to evolve. They chose to become something new and wonderful. And look where it led them, Velthek said. They're extinct. No, Dr. Morris said, pulling out a datapad. They're not extinct. We found DNA evidence that they had children. Those children survived and thrived. They just became something different from what their parents had been. She activated a holographic display showing genetic data. The descendants of that species are still alive. They're living on a planet in the outer rim, building a society based on individual creativity and collective cooperation. The chamber fell silent. This was new information that changed everything. You mean they survived the transformation? Asked Harmony. Not only survived, Steve said, they flourished. Their technology is more advanced than anything we've seen. Their art is beautiful beyond description. They've solved problems of poverty, disease, and resource scarcity that have plagued other civilizations for millennia. Because they learned to think differently, Jake added. They combined the best of individual creativity with the wisdom of community cooperation. A new voice spoke from the back of the chamber. It was a small alien that Jake had never seen before. I am Observer, Quill of the Monitoring Division. I have been tracking the descendants of the transformed species for 200 years. Quill moved to the center of the chamber. Everything the humans say is true. The transformed species has created a utopian society. They have no war, no poverty, no environmental destruction. They have achieved what every civilization dreams of achieving. Then why didn't you tell us this before? Velthek demanded. Because the Council forbade any contact with them. You declared them extinct to prevent other species from seeking the same transformation. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Some aliens were furious at being lied to. Others were afraid of what this meant for their own species. Order, Velthek called out. Order in the Council. When the noise died down, Velthek looked directly at Jake. Commander Morrison, what do humans propose we do now? Jake took a deep breath. This was the moment that would determine the future of the galaxy. We propose that every species be given a choice, Jake said. No one should be forced to change, and no one should be forced to stay the same. Those who want to explore individual creativity should be free to do so. Those who prefer traditional collective thinking should be allowed to continue that way. And if the transformed individuals want to leave their homeworlds? Asked Harmony. Then they should be free to leave, Paul said. We could establish new colonies where individuals from all species can live together and create something new. A galactic federation based on choice rather than species, Dr. Carter added, where Nexari artists could work with Krillian poets and Zephyrian inventors. And what about those who choose not to change? Asked an unchanged alien. They would be respected and protected, Jake promised. No one would force transformation on anyone, but no one would be allowed to prevent others from choosing transformation either. The debate continued for hours. Some aliens argued for the old ways. Others demanded the right to change. A few suggested compromise solutions. Finally, Velthic called for a vote. All in favor of the human proposal for universal choice? Lights began appearing across the chamber as aliens cast their votes. Jake held his breath as the computer counted the results. The vote is 847 in favor, 312 against, with 93 abstentions, announced the computer. The proposal passes. The chamber erupted in celebration and protest. Some aliens cheered while others stormed out in anger. The Galactic Council hereby establishes the principle of universal choice, Velthic declared. Every sentient being has the right to choose their own path of development, whether individual or collective, traditional or transformative. Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. They had done it. They had prevented a galactic war and established a new foundation for interspecies relations. There is one more thing, Velthic said. A council votes to establish humanity as the guardians of this new principle. You will help establish the new colonies and protect the rights of all who choose transformation. 3 months later, Jake stood on the observation deck of the USS Horizon, watching the construction of New Harmony, the first mixed-species colony. Humans worked alongside transformed Nexari, Krillians, Zephyrians, and dozens of other species. Captain's log supplemental. Jake spoke into his recorder. The transformation of the galaxy continues. Billions of beings are discovering creativity, individuality, and freedom for the first time. Some species have chosen to remain unchanged, and their decision is respected. Others have embraced transformation completely. He paused to watch a group of young aliens of mixed species playing together, creating art, and learning from each other.